And welcome back to Littles by Lyra. I think I may have mentioned in a previous video that I live in a family of gamers. My son saw the Amelia the Bard miniature and asked if I would make him a fig for one of his tabletop games. I had such a fun time making Amelia, I jumped at the chance and, well, truth be told, it always warms my heart when my children want me to make something for them, so I had to say yes. To begin, start with 2 tiny balls of brown clay and pre-bake them for 5 minutes. These will be the eyes. Next, I took a ball of brown clay and rolled it into a flattened cylinder and checked to make sure it would fit on a 1-inch washer. I cut the top and bottoms of the brown clay off so it would sit levelly on the washer. Joey, my son, is playing a character class called a Wu-Gen, pronounced Wu-Ren in Mandarin. They cast elemental spells from earth, wind, fire, water. Hey, is anyone else getting a Captain Planet vibe or is it just me? Anyway, I'm using brown to represent the earth at his feet. Using one of the pieces I cut off, I flattened it into a disc and applied some liquid translucent Sculpey, or TLS, to the washer, and then formed a disc of brown clay onto the washer, forming the base of the miniature. I used my clay blade to carefully shave off any overhang from the bottom. Please, guys, don't cut yourselves. If you're making this as a gift for a gamer in your life, telling them there is literal blood, sweat, and tears in their gift is a little gross. That finished, I used a toothbrush and a little ball of squished up aluminum foil to add a dirt-like texture to the base. Then I checked on my mat to make sure that the base still fit into a 1-inch square. After that, I put a small line of separation onto the bottom of the cylinder to represent pant legs. Then I pressed it gently on the base so as not to lose any of the texture that I just made. For a shirt, I took a ball of blue clay and cut a bit of it off so it would sit flat on the leg portion. Then I pressed it into place, taking care to make sure that the waist of the legs is as wide as the waist of the torso. I cut the piece in half that was just removed and formed little clay snakes, and those will be the arms of the figure. I lined them up and cut the ends off so that they would be the same length. Then I put them onto the figure and smoothed the clay. This time, I picked blue to symbolize the water. Next, I rolled out a thin snake of black clay and flattened it. This will be the figure's belt. It got a little wiggly when I flattened it out, so I used the clay blade to trim the belt so it was nice and straight, and then I wrapped it around his waist. Next, I made 2 small balls of flesh, colored clay. This is going to be the hands. I wanted one of the hands cupped, so I used the fat end of a ball stylus tool and just hollowed out the little ball, and then kind of formed it into a teardrop shape. Putting the fat end of the teardrop shape onto the end of the arm, he now has a little cupped hand. For the other hand, I took the ball of flesh-colored clay and flattened it into an oval. Then I pressed it against the other end of the other arm, giving him an open-palmed look. To give extra stability, I took an eye pen and then I formed an eye on the other end using some jewelry pliers and inserted the wire through the body, making sure there was enough of the wire coming out of the top to insert into his head. The reason I use eye pens is so that when the clay is pressed around the eye, the clay has something to hold on to when it bakes, and it makes for a sturdier figure. I used a little TLS at the neck just to make sure nothing was going anywhere after the baking. Then, I pressed a ball of tan clay onto the pin and shoulders to form his head. I used my thumbs to make little indentations in the clay for where his eyes should go. This made a small ridge between the eyes to suggest a nose. Then, using the ball stylus, I made 2 indentations and pressed in the pre-baked brown eyes from earlier. For his hair, I rolled out some pale yellow and cut a strip, then I wrapped it around the back of his head. No, he's not rocking the horseshoe haircut of a bald man, even though that is super attractive and no shade thrown at any guy for wearing that particular hairstyle. But Carter has an undercut. To look like he has the back of his head shaved, I used a toothbrush to add some texture and make it look a little bumpy where the stubble would be growing in. Then, I rolled out a bunch of snakes of the same yellow color and began placing them over his head, making sure the pieces touched so that it doesn't look like he has a bad comb over. I used the edge of my clay blade to score in extra lines to make his hair look fuller. Did I mention this character's name is Carter? His name is Carter. Since we're going to be making Carter hold air in his hand, I decided to style the hair to look like it's blowing up and away from the source of the wind. Remember, guys and girls, details, details, details. Then I trimmed off any stray bits that looked weird to me. During the process of sculpting the head, I smushed his little cupped hand, so I used the ball tool to reform the cup shape. To make the fire he'll be holding in his open palm hand, I used a little bit of yellow from his hair and smeared it onto a cone of orange clay, then tapered the top to allude to the flickering of a flame. Then I gently pressed it onto his flat palm. I had a little bit of the orangey yellow swirl clay left after, so I added a tiny amount of black, swirled it a little more, and then shaped it into a disc. Now Carter has a belt buckle. I mixed some brown and orange clay together to try to simulate the color of leather. I made a half-moon-shaped piece, and then I rolled the crinkled-up aluminum foil all over it for texture. Next, I rolled out 2 long snakes of the orangey brown and put them around the miniature's arms for straps, and used the ball stylus tool to smooth the straps in place. Next, I made a kidney bean-shaped piece of clay and textured that with the foil as well. When combined, he now has a backpack. I shaved a little bit of rust-colored chalk pastel and dusted it over the backpack to highlight the texture and smoothed a little over his hair to give some variation in his hair color, because hair is typically multi-hued. Then I baked according to packaging instructions. When the miniature was all nice and cooled after baking, I busted out the glossy Mod Podge as well as copper, pearl, gold, and blue pigment powders. I placed a tiny drop of Mod Podge for each color and mixed the pigments in as needed. Copper was first, and I used it for the base of the flame. Then gold for the middle and top. Finally, a little blue at the center front of the flame. Using some dark brown acrylic paint, I painted the base of the figure to give variation between the ground and Carter's pants. Off camera, I took a small piece of cotton ball and rolled it in Mod Podge and pearl pigment powder. I shaped it into a cone and allowed it to dry. And then, when it was dry, I snipped off the bottom portion and affixed it into Carter's cupped hand with a little bit of white school glue. I let the paint and the glue dry, and then I sprayed a clear matte cover over the entire fig. Because pigment powder is sparkly by nature, it wasn't lost when the matte clear coat was applied. I really hope you enjoyed today's mini-making adventure. If you like what you saw, take a look around. Watch, like, comment, share, subscribe, ring the bell, all the things. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next Friday. Bye!